Hey guys, in this video we are going to be comparing the Mini Bugout to the Mini 940, the Benchmade 945. And what I'm going to be showing you in this video is why I think the Mini Bugout is actually a more intelligent and better design than the Mini 945, and which is ultimately why I end up liking the Mini Bugout more than I like the Mini 945. This is different than most of the people, when I've been looking online at a comparison between these two, most people have come out liking the Mini 940 more, the 945 more than they like the Mini Bugout. And my opinion is actually different. I prefer the Mini Bugout to the 945, and I'm going to explain why. So first, if you look, these knives are very similar in length. They're very similar in weight. The Mini Bugout is obviously a little bit smaller, a little bit lighter. But the biggest difference that I've found between these two that makes all the difference for me is the Mini Bugout actually has a longer effective blade length and has a larger effective handle area than the Mini 940, than the 945 does, while still having a shorter length than the 945. So let me show you what I mean by that. So if you look at these two just lined up, right now the 945 is just a hair longer than the Mini Bugout. So you would think to yourself, okay, this must mean that we've got a longer blade and we've got a longer handle, and that is actually not the case. If you line these up, part of what you'll notice between the two is the Mini Bugout has this rear exposed tang. And so what that allows them to do is, you'll notice it allows them to create all this extra handle space. By not having the exposed tang here, they need to bring the handle down from being able to be lined up relatively close to the top of this knife to they have to bring the edge of the effective handle to this point where it meets the tang of this knife. So you have to put your finger in there. Instead of being able to, because they haven't met the tang of this knife, you can put your finger up much higher, and it's actually much closer to the blade too. So it allows you to get much more precise cuts using this blade as opposed to the 945 blade. So if you look at these lined up to one another, you'll find that if you match up the where the beginning of the handle starts, where your finger can go on these, you actually end up with a slightly longer handle on the Mini Bugout than you do on the 945. If your handle ends effectively about there on the 945, your handle ends effectively about there on the Mini Bugout. So you end up with a longer handle on a smaller, lighter knife overall, smaller, lighter package overall. And similarly, you actually end up with a longer effective cutting length on the Mini Bugout than you do on the 945. Here's what I mean by that. If you look at these just sharpened edge to sharpened edge, you might think to yourself, okay, the 945 has an ever so slightly longer blade. It's just the tip of it is slightly further out. However, this thumb stud is in the path of anything you cut, and so that effectively reduces your cutting length by as long as that thumb stud is. So if you line these up thumb stud to thumb stud, you'll actually see that you have ever so slightly, I mean minusculely, but ever so slightly longer effective cutting length on this Benchmade Mini Bugout, not on the Mini 940, or not on the 945. So you end up with ever so slightly more cutting length on the Mini Bugout than you do on the 945. And this is just another reason why I think the Mini Bugout is a better design, is it keeps that thumb stud out of the way, out of the cutting path, and it uses the space as efficiently as it possibly can. I mean, there's barely any space in between that thumb stud and the handle. It's just using the space incredibly efficiently. So even though it does have this rear exposed tang, which I get, some people have a problem with this rear exposed tang, that rear exposed tang is providing space for so many other excellent design choices with this particular knife. Lastly, something else that I prefer in the Mini Bugout to the 945 is it has a more reinforced pivot area. So here's what I mean. If you look here, you've got your blade stop, and then you've got your axis lock. And up here, you've got your blade stop and your axis lock. And the difference between these two, there's actually a much longer range in between your blade stop and your axis lock on the Mini Bugout than there is on the 945. And what that provides for is that actually provides for, ultimately, I mean, you're not going to really notice this in practical use, but what that ultimately provides for is a stronger pivot. It provides for a stronger pivot on the Mini Bugout than on the 945 because you have more space between those, so you have more leverage between those. So, all that to say, this is why I personally prefer the Mini Bugout to the 945. I mean, just look at that. When you line up the top of the handle to the top of the handle, you just see how much closer you're getting when you're cutting with this knife as opposed to when you're cutting with this knife because of both the gap here that's caused by the bolster and then where the start of the sharpened edge length is, and then you got even more space taken up by the thumb stud, so you're starting about here. So you're a solid 3/4 of an inch away from whenever you're cutting close cuts, as opposed to with the Mini Bugout, I mean, you're a 1/4 inch, maybe a little more than a 1/4 inch away. And so I just think that the Mini Bugout is it's just a much more effective design. Yes, you get that rear exposed tang. And I get that some people say, oh, you know, this attracts limbs. Well, here's the thing. It's so easy to just wipe that out because it's right there. And that's the spot that it's meeting up with your axis lock. So easy to wipe out. And having that rear exposed tang just provides for many other really great adjustments that make this an excellent knife. And I think a better knife than the Benchmade 945. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment if you have any other thoughts. Otherwise, that's it for today. Thanks, guys.